Hi guys and welcome to my channel. This is Matt Daniels and today we are going to be talking about serving in the church. I want us to serve God, but I want us to do it right, and I want us to do it with the right mind, and I want us to do it with the right attitude. I want us to do it with understanding. I want us to do it with love. I want us to do it passionately because we understand the reward that comes with serving the Lord, and the right reward, not the reward that we think. It's the reward that comes with serving, because most of the time what we feel like is the reward of serving God right now is not really the reward that we are gonna get. I wish I had somebody to tell me this. I wish that I had somebody to tell me that God is bigger than church. I wish I had somebody to tell me that God is bigger than the four walls of this building, of this church. I wish I had somebody to tell me, because now my life was centered around the church, was centered around serving God, because I understood God to be inside of the church. I wish I had listened carefully when I heard one man of God say that, God only comes inside of a box when He wants to be with us. I didn't understand then until now. Now I understand. I understand that God is bigger than what I could have ever imagined. God is bigger than church. God is bigger than the four walls. And this is something that I want to share with you, hoping that it will change and transform your life the same way that it transformed and changed my life. We go in church to meet with Jesus. And after we meet with Jesus in church, we leave Him in church, we go out into the world, we sing, we do all different kinds of things, because God doesn't mind, He's in church, and then we're going to meet Him again on Sunday. That is the kind of life and Christianity that we live. That is why people start to question. Real Christianity cannot be questioned. You cannot question the active power of God. You understand? That's why I get so puzzled and marveled when I see people talking on a table about a Jesus, that is written in books, that is written in stones. What about the riches? I want to just talk about the Jesus that is written in my heart. Let's talk about the Jesus that heals me, the Jesus that listens to me, the Jesus that speaks and ministers to me. When I write, I know that there is a God, because everything that I write is beyond my understanding, it's beyond my intelligence. So whenever I write, before I minister and I write something, it's different from when I stand up and talk. Because when I write, I know that I'm speaking directly from my spirit. That is how my spirit communicates. Here's the reason why I actually got an interest to speak about the church, and I got an interest to speak about this whole thing about serving. I've been serving in the church all of my life. I've been serving in church all of my life. I've been serving in church from when I was very young. I remember I would go to church and I would be teaching people who are twice my age. I'll be teaching them the word. I'll be teaching them how to sing. Imagine a little girl, like me, conducting all the people twice my age. I'll conduct them and I'll teach them how to sing. And those people eventually graduated, went to schools and whatnot, and left the church. We went in Yanaka Youth, and we started to know God for ourselves, because then it was the God of our parents. We were serving Him because He was the God of our parents. But it got to a point where I started to know God for myself. And then the serving continued. Now I was not serving God because it was my parents' church. I was serving God because I loved Him. I was serving God because of songs like Loko mi te karatela cheso hinkwaso shamwina stalunga. I was not serving Him because I wanted shamina koshilunga. I was serving Him because I loved Him, and because I loved to do it, because I got fulfillment in doing it, and because I knew that when I serve God, everything in my life is going to work out and turn out good. So that is my journey. I served. Don't tell me about cleaning in the church. I cleaned the church. We cleaned the church until while we still put on polish, brush until the church is shining. So shiny that come Sunday we can't even walk in heels because the church is squeaky clean. I cleaned the church with my tears. We would be sitting there, would be praying, would be crying inside of the church. You cry, you wipe, and you pray for the church with my tears. I know what it means. I know what it means to sleep in church. I would sleep in church with my friend and Cecily again and Cecily, 4 of us. We'd sleep in church. 4 women inside of a church that the doors don't even work. That time we don't even have windows. We'd sleep there. There's not even lights, with a candle, and there are snakes around there. Man, we wouldn't be afraid of anything. We'd sleep in the church because we loved the church, because we loved God, because we trusted God. We knew everything in our lives will come out all right. You know, I remember when we started preaching, we didn't start preaching in front of crowds. We started preaching in front of empty benches. There was like no one. I would preach and Linky my friend FZ, I would preach and she'd interpret with no one, absolutely no one in the church, and we felt the power of God move in that church. You know, so don't tell me about serving. I know exactly what I'm talking about. I served in the church. I served in the church with every fiber of my being. I loved it. I loved God, and I still love serving, and I still love God. Tell me about the churchyard. We clean the churchyard, and we'll make sure the churchyard is beautiful, and we'd even decorate it to make sure that Sunday service is always clean and always perfect. Tell me about fasting. Every Monday was for fasting. It was compulsory. I could not, whether I am at home, I'm at work, Mondays are for fasting. I fasted until my mother complained. We would fast until mom complained. She was like, Mita fine lala. Mara, we loved God. We did it. We fasted. We were fasting in church. You know, for weeks. We would fast for months. We would go like a whole month, like 40 days. Not 40 days and nights. 40 days of fasting. It was nothing to us. It was something that we were used to. My mom would complain all the time about it, and she was like, and then we do it. We didn't stop because we loved God. We loved God. My relationship and my mother's changed because of my love for God. You know, it changed, and I thank God for that. Now we continued serving in church. We served in church until I remember sometimes we would leave church at around, we'd go to church and pray, we'd come back late, and it's about 1 kilometer away, and we don't work inside, we don't walk like in the middle of houses, in the middle of homes. No, aquatine in the bushes. We'd walk from church to home. You know, every Tuesday we would be in church literally every day. 1 kilometer or maybe 2 kilometers away. We would walk, we would not even feel the distance. You know, and that time, because my friend stayed further from my place, I'd move from my house and I'd go to my friend's place, and then would come back to my house and go back to church by foot. And by the time we would get to church, sometimes it would just be the two of us. It would just be the two of us, and we would be in the house of God, and we would be praying. And we would be crying in the house of God. We would just me and my friend. Sometimes we would be at night. Sometimes we would fall and would be under the Spirit of God, and we'll just sleep. I can even see that stage before the church was I fell and everything. And we'd be there on that stage, and we'd be praying, and we'd be crying, and we'd be telling God, we know that God is going to help us. You know, we served in that church. Oh, glory to Jesus. We served. I remember when we started speaking in tongues. And after speaking in tongues, we'd speak in tongues even when we were walking on the streets. That's how much we love God. I served with everything. My high school, even you ask my classmates from high school, they'll tell you I was the Sister Fire. I left high school, I went to university. I remember before I left for university, my mother sat me down and she said, while she was still alive, she said, Matt, you're going to university. I'm not going there with you. I'm not going to be watching over you, but God is going to be there with you. And I was like, bring it. I went to university. I continued serving. I served in the SCO. I served because I loved it. I loved God. It was something that I was used to. I was serving at home and I was serving in university. I served in the SCO. I started by singing. You know, I would be there for the 6 o'clock service. I'd be there for the 11 o'clock prayer. I'd be there for the 1 o'clock prayer. You know, I'd be there. I'd be praying. I'd be serving God, because I knew that everything in my life was going to turn out okay. I never thought God would let my mother die. When my mother died, a lot of people were wondering, oh, why are these people not even crying? We were not crying because, yes, we had time in prayer where we were crying, but most of the time we were shocked because we could not believe. I could not believe. I struggled with my mother's death because I could not believe that God would do me like that, you know. After I served with everything that I had and God let her die, but I accepted it and I moved on. And I continued serving up until my last days in university. I never thought God would allow me to go by without even getting a job. You know, I spent a year and another year at home, no job, nothing, until I got a job at Capitec Bank. That's time I'm busy applying for it. I don't even know what to apply for because I don't even understand what I've studied. I studied BA, and I did not. My journey to studying BA was a very confusing one. It's a story for another day, but I studied BA plain. And when I finished and I hold a newspaper, I don't know what to apply for. I don't know when people ask you, okay, we want to help you get a job, what kind of a job do you want? I don't know, because I don't know what I've studied. I don't know what kind of a job to look for. I'm frustrated. By the grace of God, I find a job at Capitec Bank. I worked at Capitec Bank. Bona, I was still serving God, and I was frustrated at Capitec Bank because I could not serve the way that I wanted to serve. I could not serve God the way that I wanted to serve with my heart, you know, because we worked on Sundays. It was very frustrating. Like, I didn't mind the late hours and everything that was happening and the pressure, but the working on Sunday was frustrating for me because I couldn't serve the way that I wanted to serve. But I continued serving. I served the days where I was available. I would fast where I could, you know, and because I loved God. I really loved God, and I really loved church. I continued. I would tithe every day. I would tithe every month. There was not a free month. I was hardworking. I was a hard worker. I never missed a budget. I always made my budget. But I got fired. I got fired because I was a victim of armed robbery, you know. But I lived through the armed robbery. I'm gonna tell you about it on another day. You know, I survived. I got fired at Capitec Bank, and for 2 years I was not working. I was unemployed. How? I was serving with everything. I was serving. I mean, I lived the holy life. I wasn't only serving, I lived the holy life. I started having sex, I'm sure, at around the age of like 22 when I was working at Capitec. It's 22, 33 there. I was working at Capitec Bank. You know, I was in where I was like, you know, grown. My auntie called me for the longest time, you know, saving myself. I didn't think I would get to 28. No man, no husband, nothing, you know? What I mean, that kind of thing. Yeah, it's like, how does that happen when I have been serving God all my life faithfully? Fine, I left Capitec Bank. I got another job at Wilhelmina in Johannesburg. I worked in Wilhelmina for like 6 months. I got fired again. They didn't say you're fired, but it was like practically getting fired, right? And I was still serving God. I was still loving God, even though it was not as much as before. It was like lowering a bit, you know. But I still love God and I still served. I remember when we came back home, I started serving until God made this opportunity available for me. I'll tell you all about my firings on a separate video. But I served, and I served, and I served, and I served, and I served until I had nothing left in me to give. Like, I had nothing left in me to give. And I served. I pushed. And we'd go to church with just my dad and I, you know, and I would be the MC, praise and worship, the music leader with just my dad and I, the two of us in church. And I did it because I love God, and I just didn't have the energy. You know, I was finished. I was tired. I was frustrated, and I felt like I was giving and giving and giving and giving, and there was just no one giving to me, and nothing was just going the way that I wanted it to be. I was frustrated, and I was tired. I was tired. You know, I was tired. I was exhausted, and I decided to stop going to church. I stopped going to church. I think it was last year, November. I stopped going to church and I stayed at home. I decided I'm taking a break. I am tired. And there was a lot of issues. Some of them are personal. I can't share them online. But I was like, I can't do this anymore. God, I can't do this anymore. And I stayed at home, and I stayed at home until I went back to church, like recently after the whole COVID-19 thing. So I went back to church and I had to start over, and I'm starting to experience and understand things in a different way that I never understood it before, right? So I've served, and so where is my husband? I remember when in my relationship, right, I stayed in a relationship that was hurting me and paining me for years because I thought things had to change, you know, things had to change. Like, there was no way God could let me be played by a boy. Like, no, not this God that I've served all of my life. It was just impossible. This guy will change eventually. He's gonna marry me. No ways God could let me down like that. So yeah, I was tired. I was exhausted. I was tired. I was done. Like, I was out of there. And so, God, where's my car? Where's my husband? Where's my church? Where's my home? Where's my family? Where's my job? Where's everything there? I have been promised that if I serve, I'll get it. The pain in my heart when I bump into my friend getting a job, moving from one job, one small job to another, and I'm like it pains me, you know, like, God, why would you let us go through this shame and pain when we have served you faithfully all of our lives? Why? You know? And I started to understand things differently, and I started to see things differently. Listen to me, I don't know what must happen to make me that God. And you know, I love God. I really love God. I really love God. You know, I think God is amazing, and God is beautiful, and I love my boss, you know? So, where's my car and where's anything? And then I sat down and I started to think. God is a God of principles. You see, this year God has taught me a lot of things. God is a God of principles. And when God says give and it shall be given to you, born again or not born again, you give and it shall be given to you. You're gonna ask yourself sometimes, why do people that are not born again and are not church going and are not in the church get blessed and get rich and whatnot? The principles of God work in the earth and rule the earth, you know, born again or not. The principles of God are the principles of God, and if you practice them, you know, they will work for you. You know, I started to realize that ministry is not only in church. The reason why people fight inside of the church, and the reason why people fight for churches, is because people think that ministry is the church. Ministry is limited to only the church. Here's something that I started to understand differently scriptures like 1 Corinthians 3 verse 13. I started to understand scriptures like 1 Peter 1 verse 7, scriptures like Matthew 25 verse 22. I started to understand them better, and this is a scripture where God gave them talents. To one he gave 10,000, to the other he gave 5,000, to the other he gave 1,000, right? And after he gave them, and he went away and came back and wanted what he had given them, everyone else invested, and then they brought interest. But then there was that one servant. That one servant said, you reap where you don't sow. I want us to talk about the reaping where God does not sow. You know, the reaping where God does not sow is at your workplace. You know, this person went and dug up their talent inside of the church. They sang and they worshipped and did everything inside of the church, whereas that was not their mandate. The mandate was that they have been given this talent, and then they have to make the most of it. Then they dug it up inside of the church and did. And then they start serving in the church. Right? I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with serving in the church, no. Because one day after you've served and worked, I know that I'm going to stand in the presence of the Lord, and he's going to say, well done, thy good and faithful servant. Well done, thy good and your works are going to be tested by fire, and they're going to turn to gold. And it's, oh, I can't wait for that day. I can't wait. Right? So now here's the thing. He's like, where's my talents? You know, and he's like, I buried them. Here is what you gave me. And God was like, I'm going to take away from you the little that you have and give it to the ones that have even more. You understand? So I started to understand, started to make sense now, that whether you're a lawyer, whether you are in beauty, everywhere that you are, That is your sphere of influence. That is your ministry, and that is your pulpit. And that is where you're supposed to make the name of the Lord be praised. You know, that's something that I need you to understand. I started to understand grace. I started to understand that people that are married is not because you don't get married because of the commune. You get married because God gave you marriage. So if you are married, it's not because you deserved to be married or you did everything by the book. It is because of the grace of God is sufficient in your life. You understand? If you have a job, it's not because you are qualified, because there are people that are more qualified than you. But it's because of the grace of God that you have that job. You know, if things that you have a car, it's not because you have a better credit record than others. It's not that you are more able than others to raise cash to buy a car. It's because of nothing but the grace of God. What activates the grace of God? Hard work. Hard work activates the grace of God. You know, grace comes and multiplies that little effort that you do. Grace is undeserved favor. You don't deserve it. You don't work for it on the spiritual realm. But on the physical, God says, I will bless the works of your hands. So if your hands are idle, then when grace comes, there is nothing to multiply inside of your area. So you have to work. What do? Do what you love, what God has called you to do. Don't be limited by the church walls. Go out there and influence. We need Christians in the parliaments. We need Christians in the hospitals. We need Christians in the clinics. We need Christians in the mines. We need Christians everywhere who are going to step in the morning inside of that building and say, Jesus is Lord. Who are going to just stand up inside of the classroom and say, Jesus, take control. Who are going to stand up inside the parliament and say, the Spirit of the Lord rule this place. We need you to go out there. Chief Justice is a perfect example of what a true Christian is supposed to be. That man is not inside of the church, but he is making more impact and influence than many pastors that I know. You know? So I started to understand God differently. I was like, hey, like I've been, listen, I know that my works in as much are not going to make me rich. Serving in the church is not going to make me rich. When you are in the earth, grace operates. But there's going to be a day where grace is not going to be moving, where grace is not going to be available, and your works are going to take you to another level. Your works are going to give you that golden crown. You know, that I know that it does not seem like it's important today, but when that day comes, did I say when that day comes, it's going to be a beautiful day. So what am I saying? I'm saying serve in the house of God. But you need to understand that serving is not a ticket to getting rich. Serving is not a good ticket. Serving means God will reward you. Give and it will be given unto you. Lend to the poor and you are lending to God. Principles, right? Principles of God. Pray so that witches don't abort your mission. You know, you don't pray for it, you don't pray for money, you work for money. You know, those are the kind of things that I wish I had an opportunity to be taught by someone. You know, so if your hands are idle, and you don't do anything, there will be nothing for you to multiply. Work hard, study the right courses. You know, study courses that are gonna make you money and you're going to be rich. You know, the grace of God is going to operate in your life and increase that which you're also touching. You know, but if you're going to sit down and be prayerful, you're going to be a prayerful poor person. You know what I mean? So that is my story. That's what I wanted to share. That when you are serving in the house of the Lord, because one day God is going to reward you. And just because you are serving in the house of the Lord does not mean that everything will go right. Does not mean that everything will go the way that we want it to do. Sometimes things will go east and south, but because we love God, you know, God will reveal to you what you need to do. Have a close relationship with God so that God can be able to show you what you need to do, the steps that you need to take. You don't listen to the voices that tell you that God is irrelevant and God is dead. God is not dead. God is alive. And He speaks. Just find out, how does God speak to you? How does God speak to you? Because God speaks to us differently. I know. I've accepted. You know, once I touch my pen and I start writing, the Spirit of God speaks. I don't want music, I don't want anything. I just want my pen, and then I start writing, and I know that the Spirit of God is going to direct me into what am I supposed to say at that moment. So that is my story. That is my journey. Thank you guys for listening, and thank you guys for watching. I love you guys, and do leave your comment, and feel free to share your story with me. And hello.
Hello. Yeah.
Hey,